So what Charlize Theron did in response to Timothée Chalamet was not just disagreement. It was actually a demonstration of something that most people think that they're doing, but they really aren't. Because the real issue is not about opera or ballet, which is what he said, and it's not even about that he said that. It's this: how do you challenge someone without shrinking or getting lost in that conversation? Okay, we're going to talk about that. Hi, welcome back. I'm Leeza Steindorf. I work with leaders and individuals on how they show up, how they communicate, and how to lead with more clarity and composure and intention. And before we begin, go ahead, like the video, subscribe to the channel so you'll know when other clips drop, and share your comments below because this is a really cool, growing community, and we look at a lot of interesting subjects. So for example, what we're looking at today may sound like a pop culture moment on the surface, but it's really, I'm going to say, case study in communication and in personal perspective and also in emotional maturity. So here's what happened. Timothée Chalamet made a public comment suggesting that the art forms like opera and ballet are things that people are trying to keep alive. And even though in his words, no one cares about them anymore. It's kind of interesting because actually his mother's a dance teacher, but that's his opinion, which is fine. But he made this broad statement, right? So whether you agree with him or not also isn't the point, because what happened next is what's really worth paying attention to. So Charlize Theron responded also publicly, and her response was precise. She wasn't loud or reactive or performative, and she didn't even judge Timothée. It was simply precise. So what did she actually do? Charlize simply said that Timothée had made a reckless comment. Not that he is reckless. And that distinction is really, really important. And it matters more than most people realize, because the moment that you label a person, then whatever conversation you're having is over, period. Because if they don't agree with that label or it sounds like a judgment, they're out. But when you name the behavior, then the conversation stays open because the person can remain engaged. They're not feeling attacked. And that raises a question. If most people escalate by making it personal, by going into those personal attacks, what allows someone to stay that precise instead of doing that? So instead of arguing against him directly, she actually elevated something that he dismissed, right? She called dancers superheroes. She started to describe what they endure physically, like the discipline that they have to have, the pain that they go through, the structure that they have to deal with in just to show up on stage, right? So she didn't oppose his statement. She didn't start battling with him. She actually expanded the frame around what he said. And when you expand that frame, something really interesting happens, because now you're no longer debating with the person. You're actually redefining what's worth valuing in that exchange. Like you redesign the conversation. And that leads to something deeper. Why do so many conversations stay stuck in that opposition, like in that tussle, instead of going to expansion? It's an interesting question, because most people are looking at the world through what I would call like this pinprick lens. It's like literally taking a pin and pushing it through a paper and then putting your eyeball up there. And that's how they see the whole world. And viewing the world through one narrow perspective, even if it's their own, it's still limited, super limited. And then what we usually do as humans is then we assume that everyone else is seeing the world through that same pinprick that we're seeing it through. And when that's the assumption, and when that assumption is then challenged, there's no curiosity, right? We don't move to curiosity, we move to correction. That's not how it is. That's not what I said. That's not how the world shows up, right? Because now we're having to correct their opinion of our pinprick perspective. Yeah? And that's not maturity. So Mahatma Gandhi, amazing teacher, one of my favorite humans ever, he once said that you should never enter into a debate unless and until you can actually argue for all viewpoints that are represented. Think about that for a minute. You can still hold your own viewpoint, but you need to be able to understand, consider, and in his opinion, even argue for the other perspectives. And what does that do? That expands your viewpoint, and it helps you to understand where other people are coming from. And that's a very different standard. Because now the question becomes, can you hold multiple truths at the same time? Right? Can you consider multiple viewpoints without collapsing into one or getting lost in any of them? Yeah? And if you can't, what does that do to your thinking and to your experience of the situation? Yeah? So, Charlize, interestingly enough, did not just stop at defending ballet. She literally shifted the whole conversation forward. So she went in and she continued to say that in a world where AI may be able to even replicate performances on the screen, or where actors could possibly be replaced by those AI images, and there's something about live human expression that cannot be replaced. Yeah? Like a dancer on a stage cannot be replaced. And with that, the conversation is then no longer about taste. She made it about relevance. And that shift from opinion to an implication, that's where leadership lives, because she goes broad and from a higher perspective than that little pinprick personal viewpoint that was shared. So what does it take to move a conversation out of that present moment, out of tussling and arguing about whose viewpoint is correct, yeah, and then into something that really matters? How do you do that? And here's something interesting. Charlize actually has a background in ballet. Like, she could have led with that. Like, she danced she got a modeling contract in Europe, and then she went to New York to attend a ballet school. Like, she was a dancer. She knew the sweat and the hard work that went into it. But she didn't start with that at all. Instead, she actually allowed her experience to inform her perspective of what she was sharing without making herself the center of that statement. Yeah? And that's subtle, but man, is it powerful, because when your authority speaks through your perspective instead of overlaying it, people can actually hear you. They can hear what's being said. And that raises another question. I like questions. Why do so many people rely on being louder and bigger instead of being clearer? So at one point, she said we shouldn't tear down other art forms. Whew. What a brilliant statement to make, right? So in that moment, she aligned herself with all artists and also said we don't have the right to tear down other people's art forms, right? So she did something really brilliant there. And that's also a boundary stating what we're not going to do. But it's not an attack. And that's a huge difference, because a boundary defines what's acceptable, right? Or what's not acceptable. An attack defines who is acceptable or not. And that's where it becomes personal. That's where it becomes really injurious, and the fronts get hardened. And once you cross into that second one, into making it personal and attacking people, conversation is no longer productive. It just absolutely shuts down inside that tiny little framework. So, another question, what does it look like to hold that higher level than an attack? Staying in the conversation without making someone wrong. And what Charlize demonstrated actually is something that really few people practice consistently. She didn't try and win. If you think about it, a lot of people go into conversations or arguments, debates, trying to win, trying to get the upper hand, right? What she did was very, very elegant and powerful. She raised the standard of that conversation. And that requires something that most people skip. It's the ability to see beyond your own perspective, even if it's not a pinprick, even if you have a wider perspective, it's still your perspective. You're standing here looking at it from that angle, right? Like Gandhi lived and taught. So she invited the conversation to go beyond anybody's personal perspective without abandoning her own. And that's emotional maturity. That is social intelligence. And importantly, for what we talk about here, that's leadership. It's self-leadership. And it's also the quality to be able to lead people. So, if it ever happens again, the next time you find yourself disagreeing with someone, it may not be about proving them wrong. Yeah? Think about that. It may be about asking, am I reacting from a narrow lens? Any narrow lens, right? Or just a personal lens and not seeing beyond, not seeing it from another perspective. Or am I expanding the conversation? Am I including other perspectives? Am I considering that there is another way to look at this? Because those will lead to two very different outcomes. Try it out. And go ahead and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear how it goes for you. It's a practice, but man, is it powerful when you start working with it. So if this shifted how you think about disagreement and communication, go ahead and let me know that also in the comments. And if you want more breakdowns like this, where we look at real moments in life or on the public stage, and then we look at what it reveals about leadership and about human behavior and about personal excellence, go ahead and subscribe. That's how you'll know when new clips come out. All right. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Be well.